Shalom from Yerushalayim. I'm Eli Schlanger, and in honor of Parshat Bilam, I would like to share a Dvar Torah about the Tzidkat HaTzadik's philosophy on Chutzpah. The Tzidkat HaTzadik, Reb Tzadok Hakohen, in his book Tzidkat HaTzadik, section Memvav, that's 46. He begins by stating that, of course, we all understand that we're expected to listen to the rabbis. That's something that God wants. And then he says, there are times, however, where we find that that's a problem. And he was writing specifically with regards to the opinion that the rabbis had in his generation that people should not be going into Eretz Israel. And so regarding this particular mitzvah of going into Eretz Yisrael and the mitzvah of his rabbis of his generation to not go into Eretz Yisrael, he relates back to the Ma'apilim, where they were told, while it's true that the Jewish people will be entering into Israel, now that God has decreed, since the spies encounter that you're not to go into Eretz Yisrael, at least not for 40 years, this group decides to go in anyway. And in discussing them, he says that they were following a Gemara. There's a Gemara in Pesachim that's a story about Rav Huna. It's a story, it's not a pasuk. But Rav Huna says he was a guest at someone's house, and the story is told that he was doing all sorts of things that the host asked him to do. And he explained to a student, Kol asher yomar lecha ba'al habayit, aseh chutz mitzeh. This is, if you want to look it up in Pesachim Pei Vav Amud Bet. Anything the Baal Habayit asks you to do, you should do, except for leave. A host has no right to ask a guest to leave. And what the Tzidkat HaTzadik, Reb Tzadok, is doing is he's using this as a parable, and he says that we are all guests in God's home in the world. And he can ask us to do anything, but he can't ask us to live against our inner selves, something that's going to deny us our existence. He can't ask us to do that. We can't accept that. And that's exactly what the Ma'apilim were doing. They were rejecting that request of them to deny their existence, to not go into Eretz Yisrael. They needed so badly to go in, they ended up giving up their lives because the enemies killed them when they arrived. Reb Tzadok expounds upon this and discusses Chutzpah in the Gemara. The Gemara in Sanhedrin on Kuf Hei Amud Aleph, that's 105a, describes, and here's where the Parshat comes in, describes Chutzpah being, there are two opinions. The first one is that Chutzpah is effective. As we see in the Parshat of Parshat Balak, Bilam is told by God, no, you shouldn't go with these people. Don't go with the Sarei Moab and Sarei Midian to curse the Jewish people. And he goes anyway. And it's a chutzpah. How dare he go against God's wishes? And he goes, and on his way they encounter, his donkey sees this angel holding a sword in front of him, and he doesn't even see it. His vision is so clouded. God opens his eyes. It's this powerful scene. And he says, okay, you can go. He changes his mind, as it were, although God ends up giving him the words that he wants, which is not what Bilam was looking for. But he somehow it's effective, and his chutzpah is effective in the sense that he has asked for permission, received none, gone ahead and done it anyway, and then received permission to go. Right, it's interesting that God ends up doing whatever he wants in the end anyway. That's how the world is. But there's a power to chutzpah. It's effective. And the second opinion is that it's malchuta b'li taga. Chutzpah to malchuta b'li taga. There's kingship there's power in chutzpah, but there's no crown. There's no glory in it. And it strikes me on a very simple level, as though it were, a child in the classroom who's the mouth, the one who's always chutzpah dik to the teacher, and this person has a power in the classroom without actually having any authority. There's no glory in that power, but they do have a power sort of undermining authority. But Reb Tzadok wants to take this to a more Kabbalistic level, And he says in the footsteps leading up to the Messiah, Bilam saw that in the footsteps leading up to the Messiah, the concept of chutzpah is more dominant, more important. And he saw malchut without keter. He saw on the sfirot of the divine emanations, we have different levels. The lowest level is malchut, that's kingship. And the highest level is the crown, is keter. And he's saying here we have keter, we have the will of Israel and their power and their authority without the crown of God, without the will of God above that authority. And that's actually in line with something we see in the Gemara in Sota. Reb Tzadok brings up a Mishnah that's on Sota Mem Tet Amud Bet, where it's describing all of the things that will happen during the footsteps leading up to the Mashiach. And one of the things is Be'ikvata D'Mashicha Chutzpah Yisgeh. Right? Chutzpah will reign, and the idea that chutzpah will reign in the times leading up to the Mashiach, he sees this as an invitation to their generation. He says, Moshe told them, you're not going to succeed going into Eretz Yisrael. But he said, Vihi lo titzlach. And Vihi, said Reb Tzadok, traditionally always means, perhaps not here, but another place, yes. Vihi lo titzlach, but another time, you will succeed going into Israel. And he says, Vihi, what is that other time? It's now. And Reb Tzadok asks his generation to go into Eretz Yisrael at that time. And in fact, history proves him right. It was the time to go into Eretz Yisrael, and unfortunately, the Jews that stayed behind mostly perished in the Holocaust. Reb Tzadok also has, sort of in a similar vein, a statement about Bilam in Samech Vav of Tzidkat Tzadik, where he says that Bilam saw this as the right path for him. This was Yashar for Bilam, and really, Reb Tzadok is following in a long tradition of Hasidim, starting from the Choza, perhaps, certainly Rebbe from Shischa, onto the Ishbitzer, and here you have Reb Tzadok and this long line of Hasidim who see autonomy as very central to their thought. We make our own decisions. We're gifted by God to make our own decisions, but not only that, but to understand what is right and what is God's will, Ratzon Hashem. It's really at the core of that question. We always live with questions of what we're supposed to do, and we have within ourselves the ability to determine what we need to do. I encountered a woman last week who we actually bonded because we both spent a lot of our childhood dancing, and then around the time of our bat mitzvahs, we both gave it up. And while I continued to sort of grieve my loss, and she developed an eating disorder in high school and has since recovered from that and is now becoming a dance therapist. That is her way of finding an outlet of her doing what she knows is the will of God. But I think that that's the principle that Reb Tzadok is talking about. Everything that God has asked you to do, you should do it, but not if it denies you your essential existence. And I just want to comment on the SCOTUS decision. The Supreme Court of the United States decided that illegalizing gay marriage is against the Constitution. And I'm not in America anymore, but I do think that people who are struggling with this decision, who are struggling perhaps knowing somebody who is in the Orthodox community and gay, and either in a relationship or looking to be in a relationship, I think that this principle of Reb Tzadok can really be a guiding feature to us in understanding this. We aren't supposed to reject our essential selves. God created us with a will and with an ability to determine what it is we're supposed to do. And sometimes that means giving up our lives, as in the case of Ma'apilim. Sometimes it just means that we have influence because of our chutzpah, because like Bilam somehow got God to change his mind. Whatever the case may be, it's important to understand that we are autonomous individuals and God made us that way and he wants us to be that way. And I bless us all that we should find our path and we should go forth and be blessed by God. Shabbat Shalom.